The moment Marcus Thornton walked through the front door of his estate, his eyes landed on shattered glass scattered across the marble floor, his 5-year-old daughter Emma's arm wrapped in a blood-stained towel, and his golden retriever Bailey standing in the middle of the chaos with blood on her muzzle. And before anyone could say a single word, before the nanny could explain, before his 7-year-old son Lucas could even look up, this billionaire who prided himself on control and logic pointed his finger at the dog and screamed words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He told Bailey she was dangerous, he yelled at her to get out, he ordered his staff to lock her in the garage and call animal control first thing in the morning because this dog, this animal he never truly wanted in the first place, had finally shown her true nature. And as Bailey lowered her head and walked slowly toward the back of the house with her tail tucked between her legs and her golden fur matted with something red, not a single person in that room understood that this dog, this gentle creature now being treated like a monster, had just risked everything to save the 2 children Marcus loved more than his own billion-dollar empire. But to understand how we got here, to understand why this moment is so heartbreaking and so painfully unfair, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when Bailey first came into this family's life and why she meant everything to 2 kids who had everything money could buy except the one thing they needed most. Marcus Thornton was the kind of father you read about in magazines, the CEO of a tech empire, a man whose face was on the cover of Forbes twice before he turned 40, a man who built schools in developing countries and donated millions to charity, but also a man who missed every single one of Lucas's soccer games last season, a man who had to be reminded by his assistant to call Emma on her birthday, a man who loved his children deeply but showed it through deposits into their trust funds, rather than time spent on the living room floor. And when his wife Catherine suggested getting a dog 3 years ago, Marcus said no immediately. He said a dog would be too much work, too messy, too distracting, but Catherine knew better. She knew that Lucas was struggling with anxiety and Emma had started waking up with nightmares after she began kindergarten, so she brought Bailey home anyway. A clumsy 8-week-old golden retriever with paws too big for her body and eyes that seemed to hold more warmth than any creature had a right to, and Marcus barely looked at the puppy when Catherine introduced her. He just nodded and went back to his phone, already late for a call with investors in Tokyo, and that was fine, Catherine thought, because this dog wasn't for Marcus anyway, this dog was for the children, and from the very first night, it was clear that Bailey understood her purpose in this house. Lucas was the first to fall completely in love. This quiet 7-year-old boy who struggled to make friends at his expensive private school found his best friend in a dog who never judged him, never made him feel weird for being shy, never laughed when he stuttered during moments of nervousness, and Bailey would sit beside him every night while he did his homework, her head resting on his knee, her presence saying everything Lucas needed to hear without using a single word. And Emma, little Emma with her wild curls and her endless questions, she treated Bailey like a living stuffed animal at first, dressing her in tutus and plastic tiaras, and Bailey let her. Bailey sat perfectly still while this tiny human decorated her with ribbons because somehow this dog understood that her job wasn't to play, her job was to protect, and as the months turned into years, Bailey became the emotional anchor of the Thornton household. She was there when Catherine had to leave for a week-long business trip, sleeping outside the children's bedroom door like a sentry. She was there when Lucas scraped his knee on the driveway and needed someone to sit with him while he cried. She was there when Emma had a fever and refused to sleep unless Bailey was curled up at the foot of her bed. And through it all, Marcus remained distant, not cruel exactly, but indifferent. He would step over Bailey when she was sleeping in the hallway, he would complain about the dog hair on his suits, he would remind Catherine that he never wanted a pet in the first place, and Bailey seemed to sense this. She kept her distance from Marcus. She never approached him for affection, she never tried to win him over with tricks or cuddles. It was almost like she knew that her love was meant for the children and the children alone. Then came that October afternoon, the day that would change everything, the day that would force Marcus Thornton to confront the biggest mistake of his life, and it started like any other day in the Thornton mansion. Catherine was in New York for a conference, Marcus was in his home office on a video call with his board of directors, and the children were in the playroom with their nanny Sarah, a sweet college student who had been with the family for almost a year, and everything was fine. Everything was perfectly normal, until Sarah realized she had left her phone charging in the kitchen and stepped out for just a moment to grab it, and in that moment, in those 60 seconds when the children were alone, something happened that no one could have predicted. Emma had been playing near the window, the large bay window that overlooked the garden, and she noticed a bird outside, a pretty little bird with blue feathers that was sitting on the ledge, and she wanted to see it closer, so she climbed up onto the window seat, and when the bird flew away, she leaned forward, pressing her small hands against the glass, and that's when she saw something that made her gasp. There was a man in the garden, a man dressed in dark clothes. A man she had never seen before, and he was walking toward the back door, the door that led directly into the house, the door that someone had forgotten to lock. Now Bailey had been resting in the corner of the playroom, her eyes half closed in that drowsy way dogs have when they're completely at peace, but the moment Emma gasped, Bailey's head shot up, her ears rotated forward like satellite dishes picking up a signal, and she moved to the window with a speed that surprised even herself, and when she saw what Emma was looking at, when she saw that stranger in dark clothes trying the handle of the back door, something ancient and powerful awakened. Inside this gentle golden retriever, something that transformed her from a family pet into a guardian, and Bailey started barking, not her usual playful bark, but a deep, guttural sound that seemed to come from somewhere primal, and she ran toward the door of the playroom, toward the hallway that led to the back of the house, but Emma and Lucas didn't understand what was happening. Lucas just thought Bailey was being weird, and Emma, poor little Emma who was still standing on that window seat, lost her balance when Bailey's sudden movement startled her, and she fell backward, her arm crashing through the glass of a decorative shelf that held Catherine's crystal collection, and the sound of shattering glass was so loud that it echoed through the entire mansion. Upstairs in his office, Marcus heard the crash, but he was in the middle of explaining a merger strategy to his board, so he assumed Sarah had it handled. He assumed everything was fine, but everything was not fine, because in the playroom, Emma was screaming and there was blood running down her arm from where the glass had cut her, and Lucas was crying because he didn't know what to do, and Sarah came running back from the kitchen at the sound of the crash. And what she saw when she entered that room was chaos, pure chaos. There was blood on Emma's arm and broken glass everywhere, and Bailey was at the door barking like she had lost her mind, and Sarah's first instinct was to grab Emma and wrap her arm in the first thing she could find, a kitchen towel that someone had left on a side table, and she held this crying child in her arms while trying to calm Lucas down, and through it all, Bailey kept barking, kept scratching at the door, kept acting in a way that Sarah had never seen before, and in Sarah's panicked mind, she started to wonder if Bailey had caused this, if Bailey had knocked Emma down, if Bailey had somehow triggered this whole disaster, because nothing else made sense. And when Marcus finally came downstairs, when he saw the scene that would haunt his nightmares for years to come, Sarah was so flustered that she couldn't explain properly. She just said that there was an accident and Emma was hurt and Bailey was acting crazy, and Marcus saw the blood on Bailey's muzzle, the blood that had gotten there when Bailey licked Emma's arm trying to comfort her, and he saw the shattered glass and his daughter's tears, and he made a decision in that moment based on everything he thought he knew. A decision that would break his heart when he learned the truth. He screamed at Bailey, his voice filled with a rage that surprised even himself, and he called her a dangerous animal. He said she never should have been allowed near his children. He blamed her for everything he was seeing, and when Bailey tried to approach him, tried to get his attention, tried desperately to communicate that something was still wrong, that there was still danger, Marcus pushed her away. Physically pushed this dog who had never done anything but love his family, and he told the staff to lock her in the garage, and as Bailey was led away, her head hanging low, her eyes filled with confusion and hurt, she kept looking back at the children. She kept trying to pull toward the back of the house, because Bailey knew something that no one else in that room had figured out yet. She knew that the danger wasn't over. For the next 3 hours, Bailey sat alone in the dark garage, her golden fur still stained with Emma's blood, her heart breaking in a way that dogs aren't supposed to be able to feel, and she whimpered softly, not for herself, but for the children she had failed to protect, the children she had tried so hard to save. And inside the house, Marcus had calmed down enough to take Emma to the family doctor, who cleaned and bandaged her arm and assured him that the cuts were superficial, nothing that wouldn't heal in a week or two. And when they got home, Marcus felt justified in his anger. He felt certain that he had done the right thing by getting rid of the dog, and he told Catherine over the phone that they would be finding Bailey a new home. And Catherine was confused and upset, but she was thousands of miles away and there was nothing she could do except trust her husband's judgment. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, missing the weight of Bailey's head on his feet, missing the sound of her breathing in the darkness, and Emma kept asking where Bailey was, kept crying for her dog, and Marcus just kept saying that Bailey was gone, that Bailey had done something bad, that they would get a new pet someday. one that wasn't dangerous, and he really believed what he was saying. He really thought he was protecting his family, until the next morning when the head of security asked to speak with him privately. The security guard's name was Walter. He had been with the family for 15 years, and he had spent the morning reviewing the footage from the previous day because standard protocol required it after any incident, and what Walter showed Marcus on that screen changed everything. It destroyed every assumption Marcus had made and rebuilt his understanding of what had happened in a way that felt like a knife to the chest. The footage showed Emma climbing onto the window seat, showed her looking outside and gasping, and then it showed something that made Marcus's blood run cold. It showed a man in dark clothes approaching the back door, a man who was later identified as a serial home invader who had been targeting wealthy families in the area for months, and the footage showed Bailey seeing this threat, showed Bailey running toward the playroom door not to escape but to intercept, showed Bailey barking desperately to alert someone, anyone, that danger was coming, and in the chaos of Bailey's alarm, Emma had fallen, but that wasn't Bailey's fault. That was the universe's cruel timing, and what Marcus saw next made him have to sit down because his legs wouldn't hold him anymore, because the footage showed Bailey running to the back door, running to the very door the intruder was trying to open, and it showed this gentle golden retriever throwing herself against that door again and again, showed her snarling and barking with such ferocity that the intruder stopped trying to get in, showed her defending that entry point until the intruder finally gave up and ran away, showed her protecting those children with nothing but her own body as a weapon, and Bailey had done all of this, had saved his family from something unimaginable, and Marcus had punished her for it. The drive to the garage felt like the longest walk of Marcus's life, and when he opened that door and saw Bailey lying on the cold concrete floor, her tail giving one weak wag of recognition despite everything he had done to her, Marcus Thornton, the billionaire who never cried, fell to his knees and sobbed. He wrapped his arms around this dog who had every right to hate him, this dog who had been rejected and screamed at and locked away in the dark. And Bailey just leaned into him, she just licked the tears from his face, she just forgave him instantly and completely because that's what dogs do, that's what makes them better than most of us will ever be, and Marcus kept saying he was sorry, kept saying he didn't know, kept promising that he would never make this mistake again, and when Lucas and Emma came running into the garage because they had heard their father crying, they found him on the floor with Bailey in his arms, and Emma threw herself onto both of them, and Lucas joined seconds later, and this family, this broken family that had everything except presents, was finally whole for the first time in years. In the weeks that followed, Marcus changed, not overnight and not perfectly, but genuinely. He started coming home for dinner, he started sitting on the floor to play with his kids, he started giving Bailey treats and scratches behind her ears, he started being the father and the person he had always been too busy to become, and every night before bed, he would find Bailey and thank her quietly. Not because he thought she understood the words but because he needed to say them, because that dog had done more than save his children from an intruder, she had saved him from becoming the kind of man who was never really there, and sometimes the most important lessons come from the ones we least expect, sometimes the heroes in our lives aren't wearing capes or carrying titles, sometimes they have 4 legs and a wagging tail and a heart big enough to forgive us even when we don't deserve it. So I have to ask you, if you were in Marcus's position, if you had made that terrible mistake and discovered the truth, how would you have made it right? Would you have been able to forgive yourself as easily as Bailey forgave him? Let me know in the comments because I really want to hear your thoughts, and if this story touched you, if it made you think about the quiet heroes in your own life, the ones who love you without conditions, please share it with someone who believes that dogs are more than just pets, they're family, because stories like this deserve to be told and retold until everyone understands that loyalty and love don't always speak in words. Sometimes they bark, sometimes they protect, and sometimes they save lives while we're too busy to notice.